Hey, how's it going? So we'll be looking at law of sines and cosines for this module. These are formulas that's going to be on your formula sheet, and we're going to utilize the sine rule and the cosine rule. The way you kind of read these is side A divided by sine of angle A is equal to side B divided by sine of angle B, which is equal to side C divided by sine of angle C. You won't use all three. You would just use two of them and cross multiply to find the missing value. When it comes to cosine rule, you see that there looks like there's two, but there's technically one. If I manipulated this cosine rule, I would get this one. And if I manipulated this one, I would get this one. What I want you to notice is, notice what's being set by itself. Here, cosine C, so the large C is set by itself, which means this means you're looking for a missing angle. Notice here you have C squared, which is the lowercase c. The lowercase is representing a side, so that means you're looking for a missing side here. Now granted, you still have to take the square root at the end to get C by itself, and here you still have to do the inverse cosine to get this cosine away so you can get the uppercase C by itself here. Alright, so you do have one additional step in both of these when it comes to the cosine rule, but when it comes to the sine rule, you won't. You would just evaluate, get to your final answer, and go from there. So now, the way I want you to look at each problem, because they won't tell you which one to use, because they might be triangles given to you, and they might be triangles inside of a different context, all right, especially as we go further and cover more skills. The way I want you to look at it is, look for the law of cosines first to see if you will utilize that, and if not, go to the law of sines. So when to use law of cosines? Two options. If you have all three sides are given, you got to use law of cosines. And because all three sides will be given, you're only missing angles, which means you would have to utilize the law of cosines up here where you're looking for the angle. The next thing I want you to check for, if it doesn't have all three sides are given, see if there's two sides given and the included angle. If that's the case, then you will be looking for the missing side, and you would utilize the law of cosines right here where you're trying to find the missing side. All right, so look for those. Is it three sides given, or is it two sides with an included angle given? If that's the case, you're going to use one of these law of cosines. If that's not the case, then you would use law of sines. All right. So let's get started with our first example. So in triangle QRS, Q is equal to 3.8. If it's lowercase, that's a side. Angle R is equal to 25 degrees. If it's uppercase, it's an angle. And angle S is 46 degrees. A lot of times they'll give you the triangle, or it'll be drawn in a different context, but sometimes they might not. So you need to be comfortable with being able to draw it yourself. So then once you do that, go ahead and draw QRS, and then just go ahead and label what you have. So then think about it. Let's go through the cosine situations first. Do we have all three sides given? We do not. So we're not going to be using that law of cosines. Do we have two sides that are given with an included angle? We do not. We're looking for this side. This is not given to us, so we got to use law of sines. So now, before we even start the problem, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if you're given two angles, just automatically go ahead and fill in that third angle, because we know it has to add up to 180. All right. Now that we have that filled in, now we're going to utilize law of sines. What you need in order to do law of sines, you got to have an angle and a corresponding side already together. What do I mean by that? Like, an angle in the opposite side, like it has to already be filled in. For law of sines, you only should have one missing value. All right. So then now we should have, so if we look at the law of sines, we got 3.8, which is our side. So that goes at the top, over the corresponding angle, which is 109. So that should be sine 109 at the bottom. Now we're going to set that equal to, what are we looking for? We're looking for side S here. So then we put S at the top. That's the side that we're looking for, over sine of 46. So notice that we only have one variable that's unknown here. So we should already have one of these already filled in. We should have one missing value. So then we can evaluate said value. All right. From here, you would just cross multiply and evaluate. So we're going to take 3.8 times sine 46 equal to sine 109 times S. And we would get this. Now, yes, you can type in sine 46 times 3.8 and go ahead and get your decimal here. That would be 100% fine. I'm going to wait to the end. I'm going to leave it like this for now, but you can. You won't get penalized for it. Just make sure you take it to the third decimal place early on. Now when we look here, we need to get s by itself, and because that's multiplied by sine 109, I'm going to go ahead and divide by sine 109 to both sides. And once I do that, I should be able to get the result of 2.891. So that means this side over here is 2.891. Now looking at our next example, we got triangle PQR, and remember the lowercase tells you that the sides, so we got two sides and we have an angle. So let's go ahead and go through our checklist. Do we have all three sides given? No. So now we won't use that law of cosines. Now do we have two sides with an included angle? Yes. So because we have that, we'll use that law of cosines. When it comes to that law of cosines, we're going to use the law of cosines when we're trying to find a missing side. All right, so then we'll utilize this one. So then now, how do we fill this out again? So we're looking for a side which is C, which here we're looking for side R, we're looking over here. All right, so that means A and B are interchangeable. Those are the sides that are create the angle that you have in between. So 890 and 220 are interchangeable as A and B. It doesn't matter which one you place A, it doesn't matter which one you place as B. Now when it comes to C, C is the angle that's in between the two sides that you're given. So 121 is your angle C. All right, so then now when you type this in, it should look like this. You have the two sides that are interchangeable, so you can put those, you can put 220 here or 890 here, doesn't matter. And cosine of 121 because that's the angle that's in between the two sides that you're referencing in the equation. Now, you could type this in and get your decimal, but you would not be done here because this says r squared, or in his situation, c squared, all right? So you got to take the square root of this to get your final answer. So if you type this in, cool, get a decimal. So you would get r squared equals that decimal, and then take the square root, and then that would be the missing side over here. But I'm gonna put it all in as one step. So I'm gonna just take the square root and type all this in as is, and you should be able to get r is equal to 1020.877. All right, look at another example. So we're gonna go ahead and draw it, and we should get this. So we'll go ahead and go through our checklist again. Are we given all three sides? That's not the case. We won't use that law of cosines. Are we given two sides and an included angle? No, we're not. All right, so we know we're going to use law of sines. Now that we know we're going to use law of sines, wait, we got two angles that's drawn. Honestly, before we even did the checklist, you got two angles. So that means go ahead and fill the third one in. So then now that we have that, remember, we need to have one that's already, like when it comes to a law of sines, we need to have a fraction that's already together. So that one that's already together would be the K, which is the angle of 15 degrees and the corresponding side of 3.7. So that's one of our fractions. So 3.7 over the 15, sine 15. And then now the other one, it depends on what side we're looking for. Because we're looking for J, it's going to be equals to J over sine 124. If we were looking for L, it would be equal to L over sine 41. But because we're looking for J, it'll look like this. Now we'll cross multiply and get this. And once again, you can go ahead and type sine 124 times 3.7 and get your a decimal. And then next steps, divide by sine 15 and get another decimal. And then that'll be your answer. No problem whatsoever. I like to wait to do all the calculations at the end if I can, just so I can get the most exact answer possible. And then once I do that, I should get 11.852. So that means this side over here is 11.852. And while that's our final answer, just wanted to show you now that we have 11.852 here, if I were to ask you what's this missing side over here, you have enough information to go find that as well. Because at that point, you can go ahead and use your law of cosines if you want to, because you would now have two sides and an included angle. And you would use your law of cosines with the missing side, the one that says like c squared equals. All right, so just know that all of these law of sines and cosines, you can kind of interchange to find all sides and all angles of a non-right triangle. So let's look at our next example. In triangle EFG, lowercase e is 8.9, f is 7.7, g is 2.2. So that already tells you got all three sides that are going to be given. So then that's the first thing on the checklist. Are all three sides given? Yes. So that means you'll use law of cosines, find the missing angle. Now be careful here. So this is the correct formula that you will utilize. But the question is, which one's A, B, and C? That depends on what angle you're actually trying to solve for. All right. So if I'm trying to solve for F, right? That means 8.9 and 2.2 are my A and B, and then the C is the opposite side of whatever angle I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for angle F, 2.2 and 8.9 are my A and B, and 7.7 is my C. All right. A and B are interchangeable, but not C. It's important to understand which one is your lowercase c. Now, if I was looking for angle G, for example, right? Now 7.7 and 8.9 would be my A and B, and then my C would be 2.2. If I was looking for angle E, now my A and B are 7.7 and 2.2, and then my C would be 8.9. All right, so just be careful when you utilize this formula here. And then from here, like I said in the previous problems, you can type all this in and get you a decimal. And then from there, you have to do the inverse cosine, which is going to look like this, inverse cosine of that, and get your final answer. I like to wait to the end to get my exact answer so I can have less variability of my answer. So I kind of wait to evaluate as late as I can. All right. But this is not your final answer when you just type it in up here. You have to make sure you do the inverse cosine, because you're not looking for cosine F. You're looking for angle F. So you got to do inverse cosine to get F by itself. All right. Think of inverse like it's literally the inverse, like add and subtraction, multiplying, dividing, cosine, inverse cosine, sine, inverse sine, tangent, inverse tangent. All right. So once you evaluate this, make sure you do the inverse cosine to get your final answer, because if you just give me this as your answer, that's not going to be marked correct. You might get some points if you wrote the process, but you're not going to get nowhere near 100% if you don't give me that exact final answer, which is 50.782 here. And just like that, it's time to practice. Questions, concerns, feel free to let me know.